All right, EJ, wake up. I did a 5-hour energy shot.
Nice.
And I'm drinking this coffee to stay focused. Yeah, I sat in Oppenheimer last night for 3 hours.
Where's that?
That new movie.
Oh,
it's fucking awesome.
Yeah?
You know who Robert Oppenheimer is, right? He's the Manhattan Project. They made the A-bomb, World War II.
Okay.
Fucking phenomenal movie. Probably the most brilliant physicist ever. Like Einstein passed the torch to Oppenheimer, right? And then Oppenheimer was demonized by the United States because of his politics, right? Because before he got into the Manhattan Project, he associated with a lot of known communists, right?
Yeah.
And the World War II time, like if you were a commie, right? Right. You could end up in fucking prison or some wild shit. The FBI is following you. But it was fucking phenomenal. So, anyways.
Nice.
If you have free time, go watch fucking Oppenheimer.
I will.
You got a free 3 hours.
Oh, shit.
Hey guys, if you're listening to the podcast, if they're hearing this, they're obviously listening to the podcast, right? Right? If you're enjoying this podcast or you just want to support the podcast, make sure you subscribe on YouTube, turn on the notifications. Thank you for the support. This podcast is brought to you by our friends at Sorensen's Ace Hardware, located at 402 Washington Avenue in Los Banos. Proudly serving the community since 1947. Please check out our friend at Sorensen's for all your hardware needs. Come on, guys, support those who support us. Thanks, Sorensen's. Sorensen's also has a Modesto location located at 1433 Coffee Road. Modesto, true value for all your hardware needs. For all of our people out in the Modesto area, please support those who support us. Thank you.
You gotta get uncomfortable, but get comfort.
There's some help. It ain't on the way. It's already waiting for you.
This little pill right here could take over your life. And I found that out the hard way. Mission statement of this podcast highlights stories of people that I've met in my journey in recovery.
Shit. So, man, we're here with my friend William P.
What's going on?
What's up, William?
Nothing much, man. Just a beautiful Sunday.
Right? And so, okay, man. So I know William from where we hang out, right, from the meetings. And so not so long ago, we were sitting in the same meeting space, and I heard you sharing. And it wasn't what you were sharing, but how you were sharing it, right, and where it came from and how I could feel it. And I was like, man, I got to get William on here. And most people won't know, but this is the second time we've sat down and done this, right?
Right.
We attempted it once, and we had some technical difficulties, right? So we're back again. And so, William, I appreciate you sitting down with us for the second time.
It's second time's a charm.
Right. and we're way more relaxed the second time.
Right.
So
way more.
So what's up, William? What's going on with you?
Well, man, right now, I just taking a little break from school. I've been going to school for the last several years. I just graduated from Stan State with my bachelor's. Just moved out here to Stockton. I've been out here for a couple months. Just started a new job out in French Camp, working for a residential facility. Just trying to fill in the bumps and grooves, trying to see what it is, or maybe even so where it is that God's sending me, right? Just trying to trust the process and not rush the process.
Got it. So we'll get right into it. What's your clean date, William?
So my clean date's March 11th, 2015.
Right on.
It's not the first time that I found Narcotics Anonymous, right? Like a lot of us, we stumble and fall through the pits and the cracks in the process. And the problem is not all of us make it back to be able to sit in the seats and to be able to ascribe to this climb, right? Of recovery, because it's an uphill journey. It's not something that you arrive at. You know what I mean?
And I'm very familiar with your story because we sat here, we went through it, right? And your story is one that's like, that needs to be captured for something like this, right? Because even in our literature, there says that there's a point of no return, right? And you were there.
No, right? For sure. And I was definitely there.
So you're a miracle. You're a living testimony of what this can do for somebody, right? How far you could fall, and then how fast you could bounce up. And like you said, you're still on that figuring it out phase. But
sure,
when I look at you, I'm like, man, this guy's got it going on, right?
I appreciate that.
Yeah, and it's not so much like we learn, like the monetary or all that stuff. It's it's the climb, right? And so, I mean, let's go back, man. Give it to me as much as you want. Like, what was things like for William coming up?
So, like I said, I just moved out here to Stockton. So prior to Stockton, I lived in Merced, California, Central Valley, gateway to Yosemite, whatever you call it. But to me, that's not what it was. It wasn't the gateway to Yosemite. It wasn't this place where travelers stop for a pit stop to pick up food. To me, it was just an everyday run-of-the-mill life of using and getting ways and finding ways and means to get more, right? Man, way back. Raised by my grandparents, they did the best job with what information and access to resources that they had, right? Because what happens is, at least in my experience, is we get informed by misinformed people, and that starts so far back. And until, I guess, we get informed, we can't really learn what that's like. Growing up, it was, I remember my first drug of choice being attention, man, right? Not just substances. That came a little bit later on, but just please pay attention to me, right? Being a, at the time, only child, because I was raised by my grandparents, I had other siblings all throughout Merced County, one in Snelling, one in Atwater, one in Merced on the other side of Merced, who I never really even got to know until I was way older. For whatever reason, that's still a little unclear today, right? Growing up, it was jails, institutions, and death, right? Watching that lifestyle play out like a vivid film. And there's this little plaque thing that I see all over the place, and it says, "As long as everybody's concerned, we're a nice, normal family," right? And that couldn't have been anything further from the truth. And let me reiterate what I said. My family did the best with what information and access to resources that they had.
Right.
I don't hold any quarrels against them. I'm not upsetting them anymore. And that was a process that I was able to arrive to through step work, right? Working steps and being able to get there. Using at such an early age, man. Like I said, attention was my first drug of choice. But when I found out that, hey, if I did something and that made you like me more, hell, if you wanted me to tap dance on the fucking roof, I'd tap dance on the roof just for you to like me, Oh, William's so cool. He tap danced on my roof. Whatever, right? And slowly, it matured to sex, right? Being molested at such an early age and telling adults about it, but not being believed, realizing that, hey, you know what? That was really hard to say, so I'm not going to even take that risk and go out on that ledge anymore because they're not going to believe me anyway, right? I remember thinking that. I remember when I was younger and I told one of my family members what happened, and they're like, "That didn't happen." And I was like, "That's odd." I remember thinking, that's kind of odd because I was there when it happened, and it happened, right? God, I had to have been like 7 or 8, doing my first burglary at 9 o'clock because the neighborhood adult kids were like, "Hey, you can fit in this window." Like I said, man, whatever you do to fucking like me, I'll go through that window. Go through the window, open the garage, we rob the house. They get everything, and I don't remember what I got. I think they gave me the Nintendo, Police showing up to the house and searching the house and going to court and all of that stuff at such an early age,
Right.
And to me, it was normal.
Yeah, you're normalizing all these behaviors,
right? It was completely normal, right? I remember thinking, that's not a big deal. I remember answering collect phone calls from my uncles who were in prison. You know, I remember my mom talking about sending care packages. I remember sheriffs coming to the house and kicking in the door. You know, being 14 on my first raid. You know, waking up with a Glock pointed to the side of my dome. Sheriff's Department, we're here serving a search warrant. Where's so-and-so? And you know, at the time I had already been using for a little while. You know, wake up with I had my pipe and my dope on my lap and going, what in the fuck is going on, man?
Right.
Been up for a couple weeks at that time. Living the fast life, and you know, people don't really realize how true and valid the statement is. Using and finding ways and means to get more, we live to use and use to live.
Right.
I mean, I think personally that's one of the most truest statements in the entire basic text. There's nothing more true than that, you know? So when I arrived at NA years later, I was like, God damn, they wrote a book about me. Because I just wanted to feel better, but nothing I did ever made me feel better. Right? I just wanted to get rid of all the shame and guilt, you know? But the problem is I couldn't turn off just one side, right? If I get rid of the shame and guilt, that's fine. But I also get rid of the authentic, genuine person who I am when I use. Getting back to being younger, being 9, 10, you know, by the time I was like 12 or 11 or 12, I'd already been molested by several different older kids / men, you know, and not being able to say anything about it. Growing up in a household where we demonize those kind of things, use the derogatory words towards those type of class of people. And I was like, I ain't say nothing. I don't want to be the next target in my family to be called those types of characters, right?
Right.
Being professional about it, right? Not trying to get too much into the slurs and slangs, but we all know what they call that, right? And I remember doing that for years, man. Even throughout my addiction, you know, sex was taken away from me at such an early age, like the authenticity of it, being able to like genuinely express that. And so it took a long time, and it's still a long time. It's still a journey getting through that process.
Oh, I'm sure.
You know, being able to work on that stuff, because you're never fully healed.
And as somebody that's never experienced that, right, and hearing so much of it where we hang out, right, and me having my perceived notions, right, because I could use those slangs, right, like I got kids, right, and I have a preconceived notion, and then talking to, like, we just recently interviewed somebody, and she was talking about how she had empathy for those people, and for me, that's like, what the heck, right? But I've never lived it, right? And obviously, through the recovery process, you know, your mind changes about certain things, right? So to hear people like yourself talk about it in such a way, it still baffles me, right?
Sure.
You know, it still baffles me.
You know, you're not alone. I'm baffled by it myself sometimes. You know, I don't, you know, professionally, I work as a substance abuse counselor, right? And I've done lots of information studies on the brain and how it works. And I'm not the most knowledgeable, right? I mean, I can always learn more. But I know enough to say that it still doesn't make sense to me why some people are able to bounce back from all that trauma and some people just never get it. Right. Once that happens, you know, it's just toast. Their mind is just, you know, they never make it back to that elasticity, that rubber band, figuratively speaking, that's in our mind just snaps.
Right.
For some people, and they never make it back, and I don't get it, man. You know? And my disease tells me, maybe you just haven't done enough, right? My disease tells me, maybe it wasn't that bad. My disease tells me, maybe you should go out and do more research, right? Because one is too many and 1,000 is never enough.
Well, thank God we know that disease is a liar today, right? We were talking about it before the podcast, right?
Absolutely.
The tricks that this disease could play on our mind. So, like, explaining like your early childhood and normalizing some of these things like robbery and getting the door kicked in and aunts and uncles and parents being gone, like where does that take you into early adolescence? Like what does it look like, you know?
So You know that old saying, you don't come home till the street lights come on?
Yeah.
Right? I was outside all day, right? I played outside. I was outside. I couldn't have anything nice anyway because my uncles always stole my shit, you know, to support their addiction. Mainly one specific uncle. The other uncle was out. He went to the Navy and then he went to prison, and he had his own class of crimes that he was doing, you know, and everybody's got their niche, right?
Yeah.
Early adolescence, man. So like 10, 12, I'm smoking weed, I'm drinking, I'm partying, you know, I'm like 13 or 14 when I get arrested for my second time drunk in public, you know. I get stopped on Beechwood and Santa Fe, and I'm shit faced. I'm so torn. 3 sheets to the wind, as one might say. And sheriffs roll up, you know, and they call my parents, you know, and I have to do all this time. And at this time, you know, all of this stuff leads me closer. I'm involved in gangs, you know, I'm running the streets, doing the things that we do when we're doing the things that we do. Lying, cheating, stealing, you know. I remember, and I'll even be even further foremost, still struggling with the concept of monogamy, right? Like, because I learned that people are going to hurt you. So I'm going to get you before you get me, right? Because what do they say? Get me can't get got, right? So if I get you, you can't get me. And not just literally, but mentally and emotionally and spiritually as well, right? Because you put up this wall, because you learn how the streets are, you know? You learn that it's a cold place. You learn that, hey, I can't trust you with anything because if I give you an inch, you take a mile, right? And next thing I know, the whole town knows about all my secrets, and I'm demonized, and I'm banned, I'm outcasted. Being in early adolescence, I learned that you can't trust nobody, man. You know, I've always struggled with trusting people. So some things that I work on today is I just give it up, man. Like, you know, it's not my stuff, right? Like, I just do my best to tell the truth. Telling the truth is a lot more difficult than a lot of people think for people who have been in our at least my situation, right? Because if I tell you something that could potentially be deemed as hurtful for me, you're going to store that in your pocket and you're going to hold on to it. And as soon as I do something else, you're going to go back to that and go, oh, remember that? Yeah. Remember that?
Well, I'll go one further, telling on yourself.
Right, right. No, absolutely. Yeah. Telling on yourself. And that's a practice all within its own, man. Because where we come from, we don't do that.
Yeah.
Right? We don't tell on ourselves because it could ruin everything that we got going on.
Yeah, I was riding with a buddy in the car not too long ago, and I was telling him the process of getting through a certain character defect or shortcoming, right? And it all came down to telling on myself.
Sure.
And we struggle with that. We don't tell. Especially you're raised by a band of outlaws.
Right.
You don't tell, right?
No, you don't tell, man. Like I said, as long as everybody's concerned, we're a nice, normal family.
Right.
I remember going to school and not being able to talk about anything. You know, going to McSwain, K through 8. I went to one of the greatest gifts I think that I got as a young man was when my great-grandmother passed away. She gave the house to us. Right? Because we lived paycheck to paycheck. My dad was on Social Security. My mom worked a minimum wage job. She was always at work. My dad was always drunk, you know, doing his thing. We would always fight. And man, I remember early on him telling me things like, you're not gonna be nothing but a loser anyway, just like your uncles. And believing that, right? That lie that once an addict, always an addict, right? That there was. And so when you start to believe that, you just buy into it. And then you own that shit, right? You're just like, this is what I am. If this is what I am, then this is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to do this to the best of my ability. And so I'm just going to use. I'm going to use, and everything that I do is either all in or all out, right? As an addict, right? At least for me, I can't speak on anybody else's behalf, but in my experience, I'm either all in or all out. Even when I jump in the damn pool, I can't stick my toe in, because if it's too cold, I'm going to be like, no, I'm not going to go in. Yeah. I just got to jump in, right? And that's what I learned years later getting into recovery, that I couldn't just stand in the water, right? Wade in the water. I had to jump all the way in. And what that looked like, or what that looks like, is different for everybody. And I'll get to that in a little bit. But being young, man, adolescence, you know, a lot of my story revolves around sex, man. Sex was being molested at such an early age, being exposed to, God, those conditions, you know. That's why it's so important to have supervision for your kids, right? Because you don't know who your kids are talking to, and you don't know who those kids are talking to. And it goes back to supervision, man. You don't tell your kids how to raise up, you show your kids how to raise up. Reminds me of a speaker that I heard by the name of Jimmy T. He says, you can't tell me about God, you got to show me about God. You can't tell me about life, you have to show me about life. And that's one thing that I lacked. You know, my grandmother, God bless her, she's, I love her to death, you know, but she was one of my biggest enablers, man. I remember her telling me stuff, man, it's not your fault, you know, it's because of this or that, you know. If you would have been able to be raised by your mom and dad, you wouldn't be like this. And I ate that shit up like it was ice cream, you know? Because it gave me everything that I needed. Right. It got rid of all the shame. It got rid of all the guilt. Well, this isn't my fault. It's everybody else's fault. Pulling out that proverbial blame thrower, going, hey, you know what? It's not my fault I got arrested. It's not my fault that I'm slamming 3 grams of dope a day into any orifice that I can shoot it in. It's your fault. It's not my fault. And I always had someone else to blame. And that's one of the first steps in early recovery, right? Is finally putting the mask down and taking complete ownership of whatever it is that you got going on, and saying, hey, this is me. If I don't like it, I need to change it. But that's where it gets a little bumpy, right? Because how do I change it? What do I do?
Yeah. Well, all you know is one way.
Right.
And so you talk about going. So like, let's go all the way to the point. Like, what are the chain of events, right, that lead William to decide, like, hey, man, I gotta change something, right? I know there's a lot in between, right? So you can get into it.
I can get the cliff notes, right? Yeah. I mean, the cliff notes. So, man, you know, I got clean my first time when I was 19 by collaboration of courts, right? My daughter was detained by CPS. And my last time I got clean at 29, my son was detained by CPS. So from 19 until 29, there was a lot of using in between there. But so I'll go back to my first time using meth. I was about 13, maybe 14 years old. And I remember using it, and I had arrived. Like, it solved everything for me. The heavens opened up, the clouds, the sky was clear, everything just made sense. Right. And so getting and using and finding ways and means to get more, man. So being involved in gangs in early life, going in and out of juvenile hall, right? Almost being sent to YA, turning an adult and getting my first possession charge, getting out of jail and getting like 10 bench warrants for failure to appear to the DEJ program. Back then, they referred you to DEJ on your first possession charge, you know, and then the judge telling me, hey, you know what, man, we tried. You need to do Prop 36 now. And probably 20 or 21 when that happened.
Prop 36 is?
Prop 36 is a court-mandated program. Back then, it was 6 months, where you had to do 6 months of verified treatment. And you went to court, and then the judge would sentence you, and then you would have to go to outpatient or whatever the level of care that they recommended at the assessment. And if you didn't follow through with that, you had to do time.
pretty hard to do when your first priority is using drugs, right?
It is pretty hard to do, man.
Right.
I remember when I first got sentenced to DEJ, I was like 19, and I lived about 2 miles from the office. It was on Cooper, right off of Cooper and 59 and Merced. And I walked there, you know, and I got my minute order from court, and it says, show this to the clerk, and I show it to the clerk, and the clerk saw, $100, please. That was their admission fee. I had $100, but I wasn't planning on using that $100 to sign up for the fucking program.
Yeah.
You know, I knew exactly what I was going to use that $100 on. So I was like, I don't got no money. They're all, well, you need to have $100. That's the fee. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll come back later, you know, and, you know, later, tomorrow never comes, right? So, man, I think all of that in between, right? I mean, sex, and more sex with whatever would have sex with me, right? Because one is too many and 1,000 is never enough. And there's a lot of pain behind that, right? Being molested at such an early age, not being able to protect myself because I was so young, not being able to trust those around me because they just hurt me too. Learning how to put up that wall, right? All of that, man. Getting, using, and finding ways and means to get more. So, let's see. Like I said, my clean date's March 11th, 2015, right? I got clean in March. And I don't know if it was just the position of the moon or whatever, but it was hot. This specific part of March was hot. You know, me and my girlfriend at the time, we weren't married yet. Me and my girlfriend at the time were using heavy, man. My son got detained on January 20th, 2015, about 8 o'clock in the morning. And, you know, like a good addict, I knew where my old lady's dope was, but she wouldn't give it to me, right? Because, you know, it's hers, you know. And she didn't want me getting loaded anymore, or at least not the way that I was using. At that time, I was probably shooting, 3 or more grams a day off top. I was renting my car out. I was selling my stuff. I mean, getting and using and finding ways and means to get more, man. Whatever I did to get my dope. The night before the cops show up, I get this bright idea. I call the cops from my neighbor's phone, and I'm like, I'm acting like a concerned citizen. I'm like, yeah, there's these people that keep fighting over here at so-and-so, and I'm worried about the kids, you know. And my whole goal and intention was to get her arrested so I could steal her dope.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, you know. She wouldn't give it to me. And I'm like, God damn, where's these cops at, man? Because they took forever. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning when I called. They didn't show up till about 8. And, you know, the cop shows up. I'm 140, 150. I'm sucked up. I'm beat up from the feet up. You know, I've been using every day, all day. I'm definitely not eating, you know. I'm definitely not spending money on eating because everything that I have goes to getting loaded. So they come, cop shows up, he's talking to me, and I know I'm not making any sense. I can't remember exactly what I was saying. And I didn't know, but my old lady had packed our car full of all our son's clothes, everything. And she had a key and I had a key. I gave him the key because he gave me some dope. He said, let me use your car. So, you know, I gave him the key, and he takes off, and he's gone for a couple of days with all the baby stuff, and we like barely have anything. CPS shows up, and they're like, whoa. Like, where's the diapers? Where's the food? Where's this? Everything's in the car. And, you know, although that was the truth, we should have had something at the house to, you know, help take care of him. And so they detained Bryce, and, you know, my old lady's doing her thing in the back of the house. I go to the bathroom where her dope's stashed. I take her dope. I take off. I tell the cops, I'm like, do I have to stay here? You know? And the cops all, no, you don't have to, you can go. So I take off and I dip. Because at the time, my old lady she holed herself up in the back room because she didn't want to surrender our son. And so I take off, I go around the corner to the neighbor's house, I smoke with her and tell her, hey, drop me off in Merced. She drops me off at 16th Street and I go to the Siesta, which is no longer there, right? They tore it down a while ago. I don't know what the timeline is. And she drops me off in 16th Street. This is mid-January. You know, and I'm hustling and bustling, I'm here and there, and I'm staying in motels, and I'm sleeping with prostitutes, and I'm just doing all of this stuff, you know, getting and using and finding ways and means to get more. And I'm just running, man. And the disease is talking to me, telling me, just do you, bro. Fuck that kid. You know, he'll be better off with someone else. You know, you don't have any of the other kids, man. Just do you, bro. I'll take care of you. It says, I'm going to take care of you. I got your back, dude. I've had your back since we started this gig. Just let me take care of you. You know, the disease is talking to me and it's telling me this. And I do this and I keep doing this, man. But for whatever reason, divine intervention, right? You know, I get a moment of clarity. Between all this time, between January and March, I sell my car. I'm homeless. I sell my car for $400 and a quarter ounce of dope, you know, and the disease tells me, keep the cash, sell the dope. And then, you know, I'm taking a little bit out. I'll put that money back later, you know, that one of the rules, right? Don't get high in your own supply, right? Kind of thing. I completely violate that rule. Before I know it, all the friends are gone. The smoke clears. I don't have anybody. And I'm left with myself once again, right? So March comes, it's March 11th, that's my estimated date, right? Because it was pretty foggy the first month when I was getting clean. And so they say, if you don't remember the day, just pick a fucking day. Just pick a day. It doesn't matter, man. So I picked March 11th, but I remember it being hot. I remember sitting on the corner of 16th and V at about 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I remember having a visit the following day. I remember the sheriff coming into the visiting lobby a few weeks prior telling me that if I keep coming here to these damn visits under the freaking influence high, that basically he's going to fuck me off, right? He didn't tell me like that, but I'll translate it, right? That was the gist of it, right? And so it's a Tuesday or Wednesday, 2 o'clock. I got a little bit of dope left, you know, and I'm down to my grunions. I don't have nothing left, man. I'm carrying around a grocery sack with a shock, a busted shock that I found in the back of a truck, who knows where, that bled all over my clothes. My clothes are greasy. I'm stinky. I'm just doing bad, man, you know, and I got my backpack with my can, you know, because shooters, we carry around our can with us, and on the bottom of the can, you know, is where you put your dope, crush it up, you know, and for those of us users, we know what I'm talking about, but for the people who don't know, that's where you draw it up, and, you know, I'm sitting on the corner of 16th and V. It's hot as hell, man. And I don't have nothing left. I can't go home because the house is on lock. And I weigh $130 probably by now. I'm sucked up. And I'm told I can't come back, you know. By this time in my life, our house had already burned down from electrical fire. I think that was back 2013. Our house burnt down. And we lost everything.
This is the family house.
It was a family house, the house that I grew up in, you know, the house that I had always thought I'd have somewhere to go lay my neck at, you know, and man, that was one of the biggest enabling things throughout my life, man, was I could always run back to mom's, right? Things get bad, if I fuck up, if I choose to go do whatever it is that I want to do and I suffer the consequences, I could always run back to mom. I could always go lay back down. But in 2013, our house had burned down, and that's where I got this nice little scar, you know, breaking a window. And so I had nowhere to go, couldn't go back home. Yeah, man. So, you know, I remember listening to what that sheriff had said, but going, you know what, man? It is what it is, you know? And so I fix up my last draw.
Right there on the corner of the street in broad daylight.
Right there in the corner of the street in broad daylight, man. I remember just being so defeated, man. Like, just bankrupt. Physically bankrupt, spiritually bankrupt, financially bankrupt, emotionally bankrupt, sexually bankrupt. Just bankrupt across all spectrums, man. And being so pissed off at the world, man. I just fucking hated everybody, you know. And I had, like I said, I had that wall up. Nobody could understand, you know. Like I said, it's 16th and V. It's on the back wall of San Joaquin Valley Motel. It's hot as hell, man. The stoplight's red. The cars are backed up. People are looking at me. I'm throwing rocks at the car, telling them mind your fucking business. I'm trying to shoot dope in peace here, people, and y'all are freaking interrupting my flow. And you know,
insanity.
It is insanity, man. I don't even, personally, for me, my own interpretation of that, right, is I don't even think I could interpret a word that's able to describe how I felt at that moment, right? Other than bankrupt. So, you know, needless to say, I do my last fix, and I still remember it. It's 8+ years later. I still remember the thought that I had that very moment sitting on that corner. I said, I'm done, aren't I, God? And in the most stillest voice that I could have ever confirmed, he said, yeah. And, you know, it wasn't all cake, sunshine and rainbows from that point on. I didn't just like merrily hop my fucking way back to Narcotics Anonymous and be like, hi, I'm an addict and my name's William and I got 24 fucking hours clean.
Right.
You know, I was still homeless. I was still at a place where people barely trusted me, rightfully so, because I'm a dope fiend. And if you leave a 20 out on your table, I'm going to fucking take it. You know? And you can be mad at yourself. It's how I felt, right?
Right.
You know? So I get clean and I start going to meetings.
So what's the first step you take from that point, right? Like, because that's the hardest step, right? Like, what's the first step you take from complete insanity, broad daylight, shooting dope, throwing rocks at cars,
right,
to getting this divine intervention? You know, because the hardest thing is to get the stone rolling, right?
Absolutely, man. We know that stone's heavier on the first push, right?
Right.
So, the first month is a little blurry, to be honest. What I do remember is I started going to outpatient, right? So like I said, I had a CPS case. My son was detained in January. You know, in January I do a hair follicle test, right? And for those of maybe some of the viewers who are knowledgeable in this statistical area, my rate came back at 84,162 picograms per, I believe it's PGML, which is, I know, that's a lot of fucking dope.
Yeah.
And the only reason why I know is because my old ladies came back at 2,000. And I came back at 84,000. So I don't know what the math is on that.
You could have got a high from smoking your hair.
Probably, man. I was looking at my CPS case report the other day, man, and I was looking at, that's how I remember the number. And so I call my social worker. I go to outpatient. I go do an assessment, and I remember at the time they were on M Street, M and Olive, right across the street from Starbucks and Jack in the Box. And God, man, it took so long to get through that assessment. What should have been like an hour and a half took like 3.5 hours, man. I was just sobbing, tears on my face, because I had already experienced recovery all throughout my 20s, man. I'd get a year clean, relapse, hook up with this hot chick from NA, and we get loaded together, and she'd go her way, and I go my way. You know, because like I said earlier, there's no half-stepping for me, man. Yeah. I'm either all in or all out. So I don't just smoke a little dime stack. Working as a professional, I hear clients say that stuff all the time, and it doesn't make no goddamn sense to me. How in the hell do you only smoke $10 worth of meth a day?
Right.
You know, I smoke $10 worth of meth a minute. It doesn't make any sense to me, you know? And so I'm taking all this time, man, you know, and, you know, my counselor, man, she was good, man. She was able to kind of like bring me back to life, you know. And later on, I got to work with her as a coworker, which was pretty awesome, right?
Yeah.
And so I start. First thing that I do is I start going to meetings because I had already known about meetings. I knew that there was a process, and I knew that the process revolved inside the meetings, man. And I knew that I had this get back into the step work because I had some clean time, man. So thank God the seed was planted long ago, man. So for the people who think that, well, I keep using, man, well, I'll tell you what, man, I went to treatment 18 times before I got it right, man. You know, I was in and out of Narcotics Anonymous throughout until I was 29, man. I went to NA my first time when I was like 14 or 15 when I went to Raft, right? Because of that drunken public. Had to do outpatient treatment, recovery assistance for teens, and all of that, man. And getting and using and getting out of treatment and going back to the same people, places, and things and doing the things, thinking that I can sit in the smoking session and just sit there as an innocent bystander. It doesn't work like that, man. The literature says that we got to get rid of our old playmates, playgrounds, and playthings. Because if you keep going to the barbershop, you're going to get a haircut.
Right.
And that's what I always did, man. I always returned to the block. I always pulled up. Hey, look at me. You know, I'm in this car. I'm doing this or I'm doing that. Look at me. But, man, that's a dangerous place to be. You know, there's very few people who are able to stay at the barbershop. I mean, I think the statistics probably like 0.5%. Like, because I do know some people in the rooms who have significant others who use.
Right.
And they're still clean. I don't know how they do it.
Yeah, me neither.
I couldn't do it. So I get clean. I'm 29 years old. It's March 11th, a couple months before my birthday, you know, May 19th. I'm a Taurus, right? On the cusp of Gemini. And so we won't get into the whole astrological concept of my personal beliefs. But, you know, as a Taurus, I'm hard-headed and I can be stubborn at times. And sometimes it takes, well, not sometimes, 99% of the time it takes an act of God to get stuff through my thick head, you know. And so I get clean. And my last 8 years ain't been perfect, right? I got clean. So the first step was going to meetings.
Well, you explained before, like, because a lot of people think, oh, like, it's too tough to get to these meetings or do this or do that. But you were homeless when you first started going to meetings, right?
Yeah.
So those excuses are not valid.
They're not valid, man. I hear people make those excuses all the time. Oh, it's too far. I remember walking from Gurr in Ashby, which is about 1.5 miles from Beechwood, all the way to 26th and Canal, that's a stretch, man.
Yeah.
So, you know, I hear people, well, I never had to walk for my dope. Well, lucky fucking you.
Right.
You know, lucky fucking you, you know. But I bet there's other areas of your life where you sacrifice certain things, whether it was your pride or your dignity or your self-respect or whatever the hell it was, man. You know, there's no such thing as a meeting too far, especially nowadays. We got Zoom, we got platforms. What other platforms? There's no reason why you can't go to a meeting nowadays.
Right.
You know, I would rather people go to the in-person ones because that's where the true work happens. Because, you know, when I go to meetings online, I'll get up, I'll go to the kitchen, I'll make something to eat, you know, I'll lay on the couch, and you know, and now I'm reading a magazine while I'm in the meeting, and I'm not listening to the meeting, so I'm not hearing the message, so God can't talk to me, and I'm not getting the stuff that I need to get.
You're not letting the people get to know who you are.
That
right?
too.
You're not holding yourself accountable to a fellowship to where people not only depend on seeing you, but you depend on seeing them, right? You're not building those bonds.
I remember doing that, right? Going to meetings and sitting in the back, putting on my hood, throwing on my glasses, even though it's 8:30 at night.
Yeah, you were in a Zoom meeting.
Well, no, I'm talking about basically. Basically,
right.
You know, I got my hat pulled down and I got my proverbial arm out, right? Like, just leave me alone.
Right.
I'm not here for chips and crackers. Y'all do your thing over there. I'm going to do mine. That way, if I decide that people are starting to pull at my heartstrings, I can get up and get out and nobody's going to miss me, you know? So like I said, March 11th, it's probably sometime in May now, you know? So when I first got clean, I'm homeless. 14th and there was a meeting at the time, like a 10 o'clock or a midnight meeting in Merced on 14th and M, or between 14th and M and 14th and V at this, I think it was a car shop, or it is a car shop, you know. And I'm sleeping underneath cars. I'm sleeping underneath bushes, man. Sleeping behind dumpsters, wherever I can find somewhere to sleep. Sleeping in, like, on the side of the freeway. Like, people see all over the place, man. But I didn't have no sleeping bag. I didn't have no tent. I didn't have a pot to piss in. And about a month after I got clean, a buddy of mine was like, hey, you know what? I heard about what's going on. You can come stay with me, right? So he's like, you just have to buy food for the house. I had food stamps, but I was smoking them every month, you know. Definitely wasn't eating, you know. I'd maybe buy a pizza from 7-Eleven here and there and eat the whole thing right there, you know, because I haven't eaten in 2 days, you know. 99% of my food stamps, as some might call them, grub stubs, but that's back when they were the paperbacks and not the hard card, you know, went to dope. And so now I got a little bit of food stamps, and now I'm starting to eat a little bit, and I'm starting to feel a little better. And he's like, but you got to enroll in treatment. You can't just go to meetings. You got to go down and sign up for outpatient. And I had already had to do that. I already had to do that anyway because of my CPS case. So I go down to outpatient. So a little bit about my CPS case. Son got detained January 20th, you know, and I don't remember what this social worker told me, but whatever she told me pissed me off because I spit at her. I was like, fucking bitch. I was so mad, dude. She probably was telling me the truth about myself. Right. That I was a deadbeat dad and I needed to get my shit together, right? Right. Because there's two things addicts, in my experience, that hate more than anything: change and the way things are. Right. Right? So, like, I hated my life the way it was, but I didn't want to do the work that was necessary in order to get to a place where I could actually enjoy my life. Right. So I start going to treatment. I'm doing parenting classes. I'm doing relapse prevention classes. I'm doing whatever classes. I told the counselor when she signed me up, I said, I want you to give me the most strenuous fucking class schedule you can, you know, because I didn't want to use. Right. Right. I did not want to use. I had reached that place where I was completely and utterly demoralized. Didn't want to use. And so I start going to treatment, and slowly but surely things start to get a little better, right? I start to get a little bit of clarity back. I'm not out of my damn mind, you know. You know, to talk a little bit about that insanity, you know. Like I said, I was running on 16th Street and I thought one of these workers that I was talking to had possessed my old lady. And I was like, my old lady's in you. That's the insanity that it took me to, right? And I was convinced that my old lady was in there. And I was like, you need to let her out. And that's where the disease takes us, not just physically, but mentally too. And so I got some clarity back. You know, I wasn't out of my damn mind. I was able to put two thoughts together. Like I said earlier, man, I don't understand why some people make it back mentally and some people just, they're gone. Right. Whatever it is, you know. And whether that's like a denial thing, like a protection thing that the brain kicks on, like when an amp overheats and it goes into protect mode, like our brain goes into protect mode and it never comes out. So I get clean, go to meetings, and I start working some steps, right? I start putting the pen to paper, and you'll never meet anyone more willing who just lost an exhausting battle to recovery, right? Yeah. After they're just completely bankrupt on all spectrums. Man, I was willing to do whatever you wanted me to do. I was walking to meetings. I was sleeping underneath bushes in front of the meeting just so I can be sure to make sure that I can get to the meeting. Well,
I think that character defect you explained earlier becomes an asset in recovery because I'll do whatever I can to make you like me.
Absolutely. Right. Absolutely, man. You know, I realized early on that I got the gift of gab, man. You know, I think a lot of us addicts do. It's just something that I guess gets embedded in our chromosomes after years of using, because it's a tool that we develop in order to get our needs met. Right. And so I had to be careful. And I had to just shut up, man, and just listen, because we don't say it as much anymore, but they used to say things like, sit down, shut the fuck up. If I want to know how to get loaded, I'll talk to you. Right. And that's nothing against you as a person. I still love you, But what I'm telling you is you don't know shit about this, man. Shut up and listen. Let us help you save your life.
Right.
Because Albert Einstein said, you can't fix your problems with the same thinking that you created your problems with, right? And that rings very true for me in recovery, is that I had to sit down, shut up. I had to put all my past experiences in recovery locked away somewhere and start on a brand new slate. Because I know, get you fucking loaded.
Right.
Right? Saying, oh, I know. Well, if you knew, then why do you keep doing it?
Right.
Obviously you don't know, so shut the fuck up. So, let's see. Get clean. Between 2013 and 2016, I'd worked at Applebee's as a server, you know. So I had some rapport with management. And right before I quit, because I quit my job at Applebee's. I went to the manager because I started using and things were getting iffy. I thought all my guests were undercover police and they were there to arrest me. And so I go to my manager and I tell him, you know what, man, this is what's going on. And I'm crying because the disease hadn't fully taken over yet, but it had taken over enough to know that, hey, I got to quit my job. At least do that much so I have something to rely on to later. So later comes, it's about 5 months. I got 5 months clean and I go back working at Applebee's. And I'd played with the notion of becoming a drug and alcohol counselor for a while throughout my 20s and stuff. But everybody who gets clean wants to become a drug counselor, man. Right. And I'm going to tell this to the public, man. Just because you got using experience does not make you a good counselor. It might make you a good mentor, but it doesn't, because counseling is a whole completely different pendulum, right? And we're not going to get into that. But so that's what, but for whatever reason, I'm good at it. I'm good at what I do. I'm good at counseling. And not because I study so, but because I've been told by countless people, right? So I get clean and I'm on Facebook and these pop-ups are coming up and they're like, go to school for 6 months to become a counselor. And I'm like, X. But then I start thinking, all right, God, you already told me once. Okay, I'll just give this a fucking shot. I got like 5 or 6 months clean. I'm working at Applebee's and it's about time for school to start up. And my coworker was supposed to take me to Modesto and drop me off. I didn't even have a car yet, but I was just trusting the process. He bails on me. It's a Saturday. I work the Friday night shift at Applebee's. For those who know the server life, Friday nights are where money's at, man, especially in a restaurant that's got really high turnover. For whatever reason, I did really well that Friday night, man. I made about, I think about $300 or $400 in tips. You know, all my bills were paid because I didn't have very many. My rent, PG&E, all that was paid, and so I had a little bit of money. So I call taxi. Taxi picks me up. I get to Modesto right on time. I think it came out to like 115. He's like, just give me 100. I'm like, cool, because I didn't have any change. And so I give him the 100 to get dropped off, and I run into another cat who's going to school from Merced there. And he takes me the whole time while I'm working and trying to save money. I'm working at Applebee's, paying off my student loan to pay for the school, you know. And I go to school and I do well, you know. When I apply myself, I do well in a lot of things, you know. And so I go to school, and right before I graduate, one of the kids at the school was like, hey, my parents are opening a residential detox rehab facility. I want you to come interview for us. Out of like 26 cats in the school. And I turn around, I'm like, she talking to someone behind me? He's all, no, I'm talking to you. And I'm like, you know, because like I said earlier, we're on worst critics.
Right.
I'm like, why in the hell did you pick me? I'm fucking a dope fiend from Gur Road. I shoot gutter water. You know what I mean? I shoot vodka. I shoot spit. Whatever the hell I can put in my veins, I put it in my veins. Why would you pick me, man? And I tell them I think about it, and I think about it, and I go interview, and I get the job, you know? By this time, I graduated from school, so I got a little over a year clean, because it's a 6-month program. The school was 6 months. So I got a little over a year clean. And throughout this time, I volunteer at the Hobie House to get some hours. So I'm answering phones, screenings, showing clients where stuff are at, doing housekeeping stuff, you know, and I'm liking it. I'm like, hey, you know what? This might actually be something after all. because I've, like I said, I've been in treatment 18 times, man. I knew what being in counseling was like as a client,
Right.
but I had never seen behind the scenes action. And I was like, hey, you know what? I like this. I like how this feels. I like it. So I get the job at Addiction Free Recovery, and you know, and my career just took off, man. I started going to college at Merced. I graduated from Merced College in 2017, 2018, and 2021. I got 3 degrees. You know, I got a degree in human services, and I got 2 degrees in psychology. And then I just got my bachelor's degree from CSU Stan in May with my bachelor's in psychology. I just got accepted at Hazleton Betty Ford School of Addiction Studies. And for those who work in the profession know that that's a very reputable, that's where a lot of treatments material come from. Because they do all the evidence-based literature, they do all the research, they send it out to places to do trial runs, and they get feedback back on how clients respond to the curriculum, so to speak. And so I got accepted to go there, and I took a pause, and I start back in January. And so, you know, and I work at Addiction Free, and then I start working at a medical detox, and then I start working at Stanislaus County in 2017. And, you know, things are going really well in my professional life, but at home, things aren't going very well, man, because I struggle with monogamy, right? Because I'm a liar, I'm a cheater, and I'm a thief, right? Just because I'm clean doesn't mean I'm cured.
Well, these things don't unwind overnight.
No, they don't, man. And, I will say this. I've always, been the addict. I've never been the addict who went to jail and was like, I was profiled. No, I got busted, you know. I've always been that addict. I got busted, you know. I think everybody knows in their heart of hearts that when they're out committing crimes, running dope, and doing all these things, in their heart of hearts, if they look behind all that stone, that they know that that's not right. You know, at least maybe not socially unacceptable, but at least legally unacceptable, right? At least you know that, because I watched all my family go in and out of jail for drugs and crimes. So I knew that much. I knew that if I keep doing what I've always done, I'm going to keep getting what I've always got. And so I've never been one to be surprised when I got pulled up on by the 5-0 when I went to jail, you know? Never one was surprised. It was bound to happen sooner or later.
Well, as long as we have a built-in excuse, we're going to forever lean on that excuse, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, until we find out that we're the problem, right? And you can no longer deny that.
Right.
Yeah.
Until you can look in the mirror and genuinely look at yourself and say, hey, you know what, man? You got some stuff you need to fix.
Well, and for me, I find that it's easier at first to accept that with the drugs, but then accepting that in all aspects of our lives,
right?
That's the turning point,
well,
right?
It was, you know what, man? In retrospect, it was a lot easier to stop using than it was to make that lasting change in other areas of my life, right? So I'm working in treatment, you know, doing well, man. You know, God, I get Employee of the Month. You know, my numbers are great. My numbers have always been great. I'm great with people, you know, and I think that has to do a lot with just my life experience in general. You know, I know what it's like to be molested. I know what it's like to be lied to. I know what it's like to go to jail. I know what it's like to be psychotic and in a psychosis state of place. I know what it's like to have all these different issues, man. So I can meet anybody right where they're at, and I can see them read. One of my favorite recovery comedians, his name's Mark Lundholm, and he said this one thing, and I'll never forget it. He says, we have the ability to read people like newsprint. We could see them coming a mile away, man. And I used that in my addiction, man. I used that to read people who were going to give me what I wanted versus people who were going to give me what I needed. The people who were going to give me what I needed, I saved them when I had nothing left, right? But the people who I wanted, people who would give me what I wanted, like would give me money, or even give me like those things that I needed to hear to perpetuate my addiction. You know, like my mom telling me that it's not my fault. You know, like my friends telling me, "Oh, that's rough. Poor you. Come here. Let me get you high, whatever, you know, manipulating people. So I use that in my recovery, man, you know, and if I'm not careful, I can still be just as sick as I was when I first got here, right? Because it's not an overnight thing, man. And even 8 years clean, there's still a lot of stuff to work on.
Right.
Like I said, my career is still going great. I got a great career, you know, and things don't get better overnight, man. So getting clean, about 5 years clean, I had an affair with one of my coworkers because I was convinced in my mind that I was just going to leave everything, you know, just fuck it all, you know. Worst decision of my life, right? Because, I mean, I've been on the receiving end and it doesn't feel good, right? It doesn't feel good to be cheated on, you know. But I think that's where the excuses come in. Well, if it happened to me, then it can happen to you too. You know, that saying anybody can get got.
Yeah.
Right. That the way that our disease talks to us in our own words, right? Because in my experience, the disease and God sound almost alike as far as tone, frequency, experience. And that's why meditation, daily meditation is so important. Because if you don't know how to decipher between the two, you're fucked. Because they can sound very similar, man. And the roads can look very similar too. Same kind of highlights and things like that, man. And so going to school, I get clean. And so I got about 5 years clean. I had this affair, you know, and I start thinking about taking my life, you know, and then I go to a place where people go when they start thinking like that. And then I get out and eventually I go back home, and me and my wife at the time, you know, try to work on it. And a couple of years goes by. We're at 5 or 6. We're about right now. You know, about almost 8 years. I just celebrated 8 years in March. We're in July, so March, April, May, June, July. About 4 months ago, you know, I celebrated my 8 years. February, I got divorced. You know, and we
take a piss. I'm starting to get squirrely.
Yeah. So February I get divorced. March I celebrate my 8 years. Right now, me and my ex-wife, we're working on things slowly, but in the back of my mind, I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop, right? Because that's how my life's been, right?
Right.
So I'm working on myself right now, getting back into the step work, but I'm also, thank God that Narcotics Anonymous has the traditions, right? Because it says through the literature, it says sometimes we might need to seek outside of Narcotics Anonymous for a more spiritual experience, right? In order to get a more rigorous program. And so I'm going to Celebrate Recovery, and I'm going to explore working my steps through their program as well, seeing if maybe there's something more I can kind of get from that process, right? Because when we think we've arrived, right, I think that's when we run into snags, man. So working my steps through NA, I did my steps 1 over, and I'm back on first step, and I've been on my first step for the last several years, man. You know, just been so busy with school and life and fighting, you know, and arguments and replacing school with school for drugs, right?
Yeah.
Because like I said, I don't do anything halfway, man. So I'm working full time and I'm going to school full time. This is the first break that I've took since I started going to school, when I had like 2 years clean. Now I got 8 years clean. So I've been going to school for the last almost 6 years, man. Just boom, semester, you know? And I think a lot of that had its impact on my divorce as well, right? Always at school and never at home, never really paying any time to the relationship, right?
Balance is very difficult for people like us.
It is very difficult, man. I imagine being on the middle of the teeter-totter and trying to keep it level, right? And then someone comes by and taps the weight on either side and it shifts you off course.
Right.
But that's life, right? That's what I've learned, man, is life is like that sometimes, man. And, you know, I listen to a lot of speaker tapes. Thank God for YouTube, right? Because man, I've been able to listen to in my last 8 years, and so there's another guy named Adam T. He talks about, if you don't replace the drugs with something else, I'm a dead man. Right. Like if I would have just walked in AA and not done anything different and just sat in the back of the meeting, I wouldn't still be here, right? And so getting here and staying here are two completely different things. What gets you clean most often doesn't keep you clean, right? Because the CPS case got me clean, essentially, right? I wanted to get my son back. But I remember thinking back then that, am I going to really keep this up? I'll just do it long enough to get my kids back, and then I'll drink and smoke some weed. But never have I ever been able just to do a little bit of anything.
Like most people fall into that trap.
Yeah.
Right? Well, you see a lot of people fall into that trap. They get the kids back, and then boom, it's on and cracking again.
God,
real quick.
I can't tell you how many people that I know who've lost their kids because they fell into that trap, man.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for the relation. For me, I think this one of the things that saved me was my relationship with God, man. Because people will let you down. I've experienced that through my entire life.
Right.
People will let you down. When you place them on this proverbial pedestal, man, they're going to let you down, man. So when I got clean, I had to let go of all of the nuances that I thought I knew or understood about being clean and sober. Because I had a year, I had 18 months. One time I had 2 years in my 20s. I think before I relapsed my last time, I had 2.5. But it wasn't authentic, man. I was just doing the motion, right? I was going to meetings for social acceptability. The literature talked about in the basic text that social acceptability does not equal recovery.
Right.
Right. We think we start going to meetings and we have all these friends and we feel like we've arrived. But what happens when the smoke settles and the dust clears and people have lives and you're no longer lifestyles of the rich and famous?
I hear a guy talking about all the time, mistaking feeling good or feeling. What was it? Feeling good or shit, I fucked it all up. Anyway, sorry I interrupted you.
No, it's fine.
It was right there.
Yeah, maybe it'll come back. Yeah. Social acceptability doesn't equal recovery, man. Right. And so I have very few friends right now, man, and I'm okay with that. Right now, as I sit, I'll drive down the Merced and spend time with my ex-wife and my son and have a good time. But I don't get to do that too often because I'm still waiting on my first check.
Right. Hopefully
it'll be here on Monday. We'll see. If not Tuesday. And then I'll be able to pay some bills and get some things, Over these last 8 years, I've dealt with life stuff, man, bills and getting into debt, and I know I'm not alone. I'm not the only addict in the rooms or the only person on this earth who bit off more than he can chew. And for a long time, I felt like I was the only one in the world that had all these problems, whatever they were, whether it was being molested or it was just being strung out in addiction or having a broken family, whatever it was. I always felt alone, and through the process of being in recovery, man, I realized that, we got a lot of cliches around here, right? I used to use the word yet all the time, right? You're eligible too, right? We say stuff like that. I haven't lost my kids yet, or I haven't been to prison yet, or I haven't had a DUI, or I haven't shot dope yet, or I haven't lost something because of my addiction yet. Well, if you keep using, it's not if, it's when. It's a guaranteed.
Right.
If you keep doing what you've always done, you're going to keep getting what you've always got. So all of that stuff rings so true when you're clean, man. And being clean is a lot, what do they call it? Being clean but living dirty, you know? That stuff catches up with you too, man. Because if nothing changes, nothing changes. And what you put in, you will follow. You can't serve two masters, You're either going to serve recovery and your higher power, or you're going to serve yourself and your disease.
Right.
And you can only do that for so long until you pick up your drug of choice. But first along the way, you might smoke some weed, right? right. Drink a little bit, not tell anyone, keep a little secret, right? Secrets keep us sick, right? And just like mold in a pot, it's eventually going to climb up over the top.
Right. Well, and getting through life's hurdles without becoming the first option, right? Like you were talking this last year, you've dealt with some pretty tough stuff.
Absolutely.
Right. And a lot of people, that's when the real backslide begins.
It does.
And to lose things but continue to get better is a huge challenge.
It is a challenge. But that's why I say being in recovery is like being on a conveyor belt, right? You can't sit still. You're going to fall off the ledge, And for me, that's back into the disease. And I may not start using right away, right? But the behaviors it's these little permissions that we start to give ourselves. Hanging out with people who drink a little bit, or smoke, or whatever. Or maybe just jumping right back in and hanging out with people who do lines of meth or coke. Whatever. Everybody's story is different, man. But being in recovery is like being on a conveyor belt. And it's like things drop on that conveyor belt. It reminds me of the video game. And you got to jump over this block and this block. And these blocks are like hurdles. And these are like experiences in life. And you just hold on, man. Sit down and hold on. It's not going to get better, but it's going to get different. It might get better, but I can't make any promises. Right. But it's definitely going to get different. And if you find someone and, for me, I just had to find someone and hold on to them, man. I remember in early recovery going to, granted, I don't really care too much for rock, especially hard rock like Slayer and things like that. But I remember having 6 or 7 months clean and going to a punk rock concert with Waylon and some other members, man. Because I was willing to do whatever I needed to do to get and stay clean. Right. Because I did whatever I had to do to get loaded. Whatever it took. Nothing got in the way of me getting loaded. I don't care, man. I don't care what it was. Whether it was my mom standing in front of me or going to jail, using in jail, taking dope in my jail, my old lady begging me on her knees, please don't go. Fuck you. I got to get high, dude. You don't understand. Is what the disease tells me, You're in my way, right? And for a few moments, I feel a little bit better once I use. But just like with anything, reality creeps back in. And so that's why it's so important to stay diligent, man. And those are the things that I do today, man. Staying connected with God through my own spiritual experiences, whether that's music. Music is a huge part of my recovery, man. I listen to so much different types of music now. And I listen for the message because artists are always delivering messages in their music, right? And so I listen for the message that God's always trying to send to me. What is God trying to tell me today? How is God trying to talk to me, right? Just like with anything, one is too many and 1,000 is never enough. So I got to be careful of things that I let in my life.
Right. Yeah, and that's it. Now it came back to me, mistaking feeling better for getting better. Right.
I love that saying.
And it's funny, the guy that keeps saying he's just back again, right? And he says it a lot. And every time he says it in the rooms, I have an epiphany, right?
Right.
It's like it doesn't matter who's bringing the message.
Right.
How we're receiving the message, right?
Right.
But so I mean, I think we pretty much hit it all. So like, what would you tell somebody, William, that's out there struggling right now, whether it's with addiction or some other character defect, or just anybody? Like, what's your message for somebody that's out there that might have picked this up and they may be struggling and don't know where to go?
Well, my message is, it's definitely not my message, right? But it's God's message. But what I feel for me, God tells me that to trust God and love others, man. And whatever that looks like for you. And getting here, that's a difficult thing to do, right? You want me to fucking trust God?
Right.
Like, why would I trust that motherfucker? Look at the way my life is. Look at what he's done to me, man. But we need to realize that God had nothing to do with that. That's our stuff. We had everything to do with that. So in closing, at least from my part, I would say, man, I guess the message would be, man, is give yourself a break. You're valuable. You're a gem in someone's life, right?
Yeah.
People do love you. And that if no one's told you that they loved you, I love you, right? And if you need to know where I'm at, man, you can find me in the rooms, man. Thank you.
And God don't make junk, right?
God don't make junk,
and it don't
man.
matter what you call God. You can call God Allah, Jehovah,
Right.
Buddha, whatever.
Whatever you call God.
God's just a real simple term we like to use.
It's simple.
It rolls right off the tongue.
It was. It is.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyways, now you owe me a hug.
All right.
William, thank you, man.
Hey, thank you, man.